My name is Scott. I'm an alcoholic and addict. I'd like to everybody get seated, and I'd like to welcome everybody to Troy, to the Tradition Workshop. And it's such a beautiful day. But if we could just have a moment of silence for a little bit, and we'll say the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. I want to get this out real quick. There's coffee and donuts, bunches of donuts and lots of coffee in the kitchen. And they got purple donuts back there too. They're really good. I'm supposed to read the purpose of AA. The AA preamble. Excuse me. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problems and to help others recover from alcoholism. The only requirements for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sex, denomination, politics, organizations, or institutions. It does not wish to engage in any controversy. Neither endorses nor opposes any cause. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and to help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. And I asked Donna if she would read how it works for me.
Hi everyone, I'm Donna. I'm alcoholic and addict. How it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our story discloses in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and as a result was a nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help it is too much for us, but there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2. Come to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7. Humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10. Continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order! I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we're willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A. That we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B. That probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. C. That God could and would if He were sought. Thank you.
Let me see. Dexter, I think it was, going to read the traditions here, long form.
Hi, I'm Dexter, alcoholic. 12 traditions. 1. Each member of Alcoholics Anonymous is but one small part of the great whole. AA must continue to live, or most of us will surely die. Hence, our common welfare comes first, but individual welfare follows close afterward. 2. For our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God, as He may express Himself in our group conscience. 3. Our membership ought to include all who suffer from alcoholism. Hence, we may refuse none who wish to recover, nor ought AA membership ever depend on money or conformity. Any 2 or 3 alcoholics gathered together for sobriety may call themselves an AA group, provided that, as a group, they have no other affiliation. 4. With respect to its own affairs, each AA group should be responsible to no other authority than its own conscience. But when its plans concern the welfare of neighboring groups also, those groups ought to be consulted, and no group, regional committee, or individual should ever take any action that might greatly affect AA as a whole without conferring with the trustees of the General Service Board. On such issues, our common welfare is paramount. 5. Each Alcoholics Anonymous group ought to be a spiritual entity having but one primary purpose, that of carrying the message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6. Problems of money, property, and authority may easily divert us from our primary spiritual aim. We think, therefore, that any considerable property of genuine use to AA should be separately incorporated and managed, thus dividing the material from the spiritual. An AA group as such should never go into business. Secondary aids to AA, such as clubs or hospitals, which require much property or administration, ought to be incorporated and so set apart that, if necessary, they can be freely discarded by the groups. Hence, such facilities ought not use the AA name. Their management should be the sole responsibility of those who financially support them. Our clubs' AA managers are usually preferred, but hospitals... For clubs, AA managers are usually preferred, but hospitals, as well as other places of recuperation, ought to be well outside AA and medically supervised. While an AA group may cooperate with anyone, such cooperation ought never go so far as affiliation or endorsement, actual or implied. An AA group can bind itself to no one. 7. The AA groups themselves ought to be fully supported by the voluntary contributions of their own members. We think that each group should soon achieve this ideal, that any public solicitation of funds using the name of Alcoholics Anonymous is highly dangerous, whether by groups, clubs, hospitals, or other outside agencies, that acceptance of large gifts from any source or of contributions carrying any obligation whatever is unwise. Then, too, we review with much concern those AA treasuries which continue beyond prudent reserves to accumulate funds for no stated AA purpose. Experience has often warned us that nothing can surely destroy our spiritual heritage as feudal disputes over property, money, and authority. 8. Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional. We define professionalism as the occupation of counseling alcoholics for fees or hire. But we may employ alcoholics where they are going to perform those services for which we might otherwise have to engage non-alcoholics. Such special services may be well compensated, but our usual AA 12-step work is never to be paid for. 9. Each AA group needs the least possible organization. Rotating leadership is best. The small group may elect its secretary, the large group its rotating committee, and the groups of a large metropolitan area their central or intergroup committee, which often employs a full-time secretary. The trustees of the General Service Board are, in effect, our AA General Service Committee. They are the custodians of our AA traditions and the receivers of voluntary AA contributions by which we maintain our AA General Service Office at New York. They are authorized by the groups to handle our overall public relations, and they guarantee the integrity of our principal newspaper, the AA Grapevine. All such representatives are to be guided in the integrity of our principal newspaper. Oops, I passed that one, didn't I? All such representatives are to be guided in the spirit of service, for true leaders in AA are but trusted and experienced servants of the whole. They derive no real authority from their titles. They do not govern. Universal respect is the key to their usefulness. 10. No AA group or member should ever, in such a way as to implicate AA, express any opinion on outside controversial issues, particularly those of politics, alcohol reform, or sectarian religion. The Alcoholics Anonymous groups oppose no one. Concerning such matters, they can express no views whatever. 11. Our relations with the general public should be characterized by personal anonymity. We think AA ought to avoid sensational advertising. Our names and pictures as AA members ought not to be broadcast, filmed, or publicly printed. Our public relations should be guided by the principle of attraction rather than promotion. We feel it better to let our friends recommend us. 12. And finally, we of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the principle of anonymity has an immense spiritual significance. It reminds us that we are to place principles before personalities, that we are actually to practice a genuine humility. This is to the end that our great blessing may never spoil us, that we shall forever live in thankful contemplation of Him who provides over all of us.
Now that's the long form. That's a mouthful. Bob Dunn's or Bob D is going to read development of the traditions.
Thank you, Scott. My name is Bob Dunn, and I am an alcoholic. And aren't you glad that we read the short form of the traditions in our meetings? But I think it is well to know what they're all about and how they came out originally. I have had mixed emotions about today, because on Tuesday this week, the day before his 12th anniversary, my sponsor died, and a memorial service for him is scheduled for today. And that kind of put me in a spot. Should I carry on with my commitment here, or should I go to the memorial service? And then it occurred to me that he had passed it on to me, and what we're doing here today is a continuation of passing it on. So I am satisfied that he would have preferred for me to be with you today instead of attending his memorial service. But I would appreciate it if you would all join me in a moment of silence in memory of Jim Longnecker. Thank you. You never know. When we were planning this workshop, a date in January was suggested. And in my usual pontifical fashion, I said that would be taking a risk. One never knows what the weather will be like in January. So we decided that April would be a better date. And look at what we have. If you think it's bad up here, you should be in Dayton. It's much, much worse. But in any event, in typical AA fashion, we do have a magnificent turnout today. I would like to quickly run over a few things with you. When I have completed my blabbing, we're going to have individual presentations on the 12 steps, following on the 12 traditions. Following tradition 4, there will be a coffee break. We must have our coffee. And then we shall continue on until 11:15. Now, at 11:15, we're going to have what is called an Ask It Basket session. And the reason for that is that as these presentations continue or proceed, questions might come to your mind. So if you have a question regarding any particular tradition, jot it down. Do we have a basket? Okay, good. And do that, and then we have a panel of 4 who will answer all the questions that you have. We hope. You will. Lunch will be from 12 o'clock noon until 1:30, and then at 1:30 we shall break into discussion panels. And we have prepared a set of questions that pertain to the traditions. They're all, you might say, theoretical situations that arise. Some of them are based on actual fact. Others are kind of made up. But they still follow the traditions. And the thing we would like to bring out to the best of our ability on this is to demonstrate to you that seldom, if ever, is just one tradition involved in a situation. Usually, they're like the steps as you get into them. If we find ourselves in trouble with one tradition, usually there are other traditions involved. And I think it'll be very helpful to us if we come to recognize that, and that's what we're going to try to do today. Following that, there will be a coffee break at 3 p.m. At 3:30, there will be a series of reports on the workshop discussions. And at 4:30, there will be a presentation by Russ Fisher on the group inventory and the traditions. And we shall close at 5 o'clock with the Lord's Prayer. Now, what I'm supposed to talk about this morning is the development of the traditions. And the first question is, what are the traditions? Are they rules? No. Are they regulations? No. Are they bylaws? No. Are they admonitions? Well, yes, they possibly could be that. According to Webster, an admonition is a cautionary statement regarding one's actions. But in order to get the truest interpretation of the traditions, it does become necessary to refer to that gentleman whom we refer to as Bill W. And I quote from him, "The 12 traditions represent our common consent to conform to the common welfare, and the traditions in the final analysis are animated by love and the need for survival." And I think that sums it up very beautifully. Now, why do we need the traditions? I'm going to read something to you. This is from the June 1981 issue of our Grapevine. And the title of the article is, "AA Will Never Work." I've belonged to a lot of organizations, social, political, recreational, religious, and have often been involved in their leadership. I know quite a bit about what it takes to make groups tick, and I know, therefore, that AA can't work. Here's a group that is designed for losers, people who were dying in body and soul. We had devastated our families, cheated our employers, lied, stolen, wasted, and destroyed, living lives of futility. We had claimed omnipotence. So we got together with other losers, and instead of constructing a respectively complex theology, philosophy, science, sociology, psychology of addiction, we came up with 12 simple steps and a handful of slogans, utterly unprofessional. Now, no organization I know of can survive without a suitably trained, ordained, or licensed class of leaders. But we AAs listen to each other rather than to properly educated and certified specialists. Corporation presidents listen eagerly to welfare mothers. Farm laborers inspire doctors. And respect for seniority Why, I've heard a middle-aged man with 9 years of sobriety give sincere thanks to the insights of a 17-year-old who has been sober a month. How can a group survive with attitudes like that? Look where we meet. No building drives, no capital funds, just an odd lot of borrowed and rented rooms, usually shabby, sometimes on Skid Row. Often in damp basements. Ritual? None. Liturgy? None. Ceremony, pomp, all those things that hold groups together, all missing. And leadership? You can go to a dozen AA meetings and not figure out who the past president or social chairman or imperial whatever is. People come and go when they please and sit where they please, and the chairperson may be the newest member. It doesn't make any sense. Look at our financing. No dues, no fees, no pledges. Publicity? I've never seen a newspaper picture of an AA president shaking hands with the mayor and proclaiming AA is Great Week, as any respectable club would. I can find only 3 things that seem to hold AA together. The first is laughter. AA people must be sort of crazy because we spend an abnormal amount of time laughing. And the funny thing is that we are usually laughing at ourselves. And as sacred forces like money, prestige, and ambition. The second thing is something we call love, which many organizations seem to survive without. The final thing is a higher power. And this seems to be the most important. He's apparently like an executive director or honored founder. Like I say, AA can never work. But for some reason, I don't drink anymore. When Bill W. and Dr. Bob got together on Mother's Day in 1935, they did not look at each other in a burst of inspiration and say, let us go out and form Alcoholics Anonymous. It was a slow growth. In fact, it went without a name until the year 1939. And the same thing applies to the traditions. Bill W. did not, in a moment of inspiration, say, we shall have a set of traditions. The traditions evolved slowly in the format that is set forth in the beginner's lessons. They refer to the session on the 12 traditions as how AA learned through its own mistakes. And that is exactly how the traditions came into being. They encountered problems as this nameless organization of strange people came into being. There were problems in many areas. There was a time when there was not the degree of organization that we have now. And New York was the only place they could go to for information, for advice. And as time went on, there developed a pattern of problems and situations that seemed to be bothering so many newly formed groups, or problems that they were encountering. A quick study of the archives in Dayton gives a good illustration of this. I want to tell you, those old boys really got pen in hand and wrote to New York. And let there be no gossip and no criticism, but I want to tell you, they gossiped and they criticized. And I remember in one letter they wrote to New York, and they said, don't let so-and-so go out on any 12-step calls. He goes on a 12-step call, and then he goes out and gets drunk. And it was things like that. It just went on and on. There were problems of anonymity. That seemed to be the greatest problem of them all. And that's to be expected, and it's quite understandable. They did not have the benefit of the background that we have. They were all gung-ho over this wonderful thing. And many of them did want to go out and broadcast this great message to the entire world. But also, it became apparent that a great amount of ego entered into this. There was a gentleman in Florida who came into AA. He got sober, and he was staying sober. But he decided that the 12 steps could be improved upon. And he took it upon himself to start that. He also decided that they should be made available to as many people as possible. And he must have been quite an operator, because he sold to a radio network the idea of a nationwide broadcast, a series of broadcasts, and they were going to be sponsored by an insurance company. And he was going to be paid for it. He was going to identify himself as a member of AA, and right there we have two traditions involved. When Bill W. found out about that, he became very irate. They say this is one of the few times that Bill W. really got rough. He cautioned this man, and the response was, "You are interfering with my constitutional right of free speech." And Bill's response was, "If you have free speech, so have we." And he wrote to that radio network, and in effect, he threatened them. He said, "If you continue with your plans to broadcast these programs, I promise you that the sponsor will receive a letter from every member of every group of AA in this country, and their comments will not be what the sponsor would like them to be." So the network canceled the show, and it never went on the road. I guess the most classic case was that of a woman named Marty Mann. She must have been quite a girl. In addition to coming into AA and becoming sober, she became involved in the formation of the National Council on Alcoholism. She was an accomplished public speaker. She had a charismatic personality. She was able to command and retain attention. And in the beginning, in connection with the Council on Alcoholism business, she publicly identified herself as a member of AA. And at that point in time, Bill W. was willing for her to do that. Now, bear in mind, the traditions are based on our the mistakes we have made in the past. And later on, Bill recognized that he had made a mistake in this case. And Marty, being the superb person she was, recognized that this was not right. It was all right for her to talk AA in an AA meeting. It was not all right for her to talk AA in anything sponsored by the National Council on Alcoholism. So actually, it was through her goodwill that she dropped that. There were things like requirement for membership. There was a group in Charleston, South Carolina, a group of Southern gentlemen. They looked upon an AA meeting as a means of getting away from their wives at least once a week and sitting around, and they felt that it was perfectly okay to have beer during their meetings. They professed to have a desire to stop drinking, but with reservation. Now, the epitome of anonymity was found in a group in Arkansas that Bill and Lois visited. Anonymity was practiced to such an extent in that group that the group chairman addressed them from behind a screen so no one could see him. And they called upon Bill to get up and say a few words, if he was ever known to say just a few words. And he stood right up on the platform, face forward, so the entire group could see him. There were so many, many things like that that brought to the attention of Bill and Dr. Bob and other people that there was the need for a codification of what we now call the traditions. So Bill went to work on that. And originally he did not call them the traditions. He called them 12 points to assure our future. Now he had a selling job on his hands. Groups that were having difficulties, they were all for the traditions. They looked upon this as kind of a means of salvation. Groups that were sailing high, wide, and fancy, they wanted no part of them. In fact, they pointed to one tradition, and they said, we are claiming the autonomy you have granted us. We don't need your traditions. But Bill was a bulldog, and he was working on two things at that time. He was in the process of working up plans for the conference system of AA. And he was also trying to get forth the idea of the traditions. And I'm sure you have all read the story or heard the story that all of these traditions came to fruition because of the questionnaire that was sent out to groups and the unbelievable variety of answers they got. But bear in mind, those things really applied only to one of our traditions, and that is the requirement for membership. There were so many varying requirements for membership that it would have been, had they been put all together, nobody would have been eligible for a membership in AA. So Bill hit the road, and he was received in some places with enthusiasm. In other places, they weren't too enthused about it. And I'm sure you've all heard that on more than one occasion, the reaction was, well, you can tell us about your drinking days, and you can tell us about that hot flash spiritual experience you had, but don't bother us with those damn traditions. But as I said, he was a bulldog. When that gentleman decided to accomplish something, let me tell you, it was accomplished. So gradually, he did garner enough support to bring into the structure of our fellowship the idea of the 12 traditions. As you heard this morning, they came out in two forms, the long form and the short form. And ironically enough, as time went on, Bill Wilson found himself guilty of violating or not observing one tradition. And that was when he became very, very enthused in the treatment of alcoholism by vitamin B3 or niacin. He became so enthused about that he wanted it to not really be sponsored, but to be recognized by AA as a valid treatment program. And he was immediately reminded of one particular tradition. And in spite of his bullheadedness, he recognized, I guess, that he had placed himself in a corner with wet paint all around him. So he did continue with his research with two doctors into the idea of this vitamin treatment, but he moved all aspects of that work out of the general service office into his home. So while he was, what shall we say, bullheaded, he was also capable of recognizing and admitting when he had made a mistake. And I think that's the way we should guide ourselves today and tomorrow and on into the future. We are going to make mistakes from time to time. It is inherent upon us that we recognize when we have made those mistakes. You can even combine some of the steps and the traditions. In step 10, we continue to take personal inventory, and when we are wrong, promptly admitted it. In tradition 2, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. So we have a set of 12 traditions, as we say, that are meant for the group, and we have a set of 12 steps that are intended for the individual. But as time goes on, we do recognize that sometimes it is to our benefit to utilize some of those steps for the individual in connection with the traditions for the groups. I think that's all I have to say. And now it's the turn for you to start listening to individual discussions of the 12 traditions. Thank you.
archives was. I guess that's where they recorded the history and stuff. And so I guess we'll go on to the traditions, and from 1 to 2, and if I could just set over here. And after, if you could just keep your comments, to 5 minutes, and then introduce the next one.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Dale, and I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. And I don't think I'll have any problem with keeping it to 5 minutes with the first tradition, because it's really basic and simple. Sometimes we seem to complicate it, but in the long form, I'm going to read it, and it really explains the first tradition in real simple form. Each member of Alcoholics Anonymous is but a small part of a great whole. AA must continue to live, or most of us will surely die. Hence our common welfare comes first, but individual welfare comes close afterwards. What I'm going to share with you right now is just my opinion and outlook as I've learned through discussions with people and readings that I've done through the traditions. And what this tradition is telling me is that with the 12 traditions, AA has continued for over 50 years, and it needs to abide or be, people need to look at the traditions to keep the groups together. And in that sense, that the common welfare of the AA group should come before mine. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to get up here and say this morning, but I had the opportunity to listen to a tape from the Montreal conference, and the lady who described the traditions put it in such a simple form that I'd like to kind of go over a little bit of how she talked about Tradition 1. She related it a lot to Step 1. As Bob was saying earlier, the traditions and the steps can be combined a lot. And in personal experience, along with the readings that I've done on the traditions, that it's basically like Step 1. And when we're having a problem, we have to go back to our powerless over alcohol. And when it comes to a problem with a meeting, I need to go back to Step 1, or Tradition 1. I have to look at whose common welfare is coming first in the situation. I have to be aware that if it's my own personal welfare that I'm looking at, then I'm not really taking a good look at the Tradition 1. I'm putting myself above the group. Many times you hear people say it's a selfish program and I'm here at this meeting for myself. But in the same token, we're all there for each other. And it's important for us all to keep that in mind. Bob was also saying that whenever there's a situation where that the group is affected by breaking one of the traditions, it's usually accompanied by another one. And in most cases I've heard of or been involved in, Tradition 1 has always been involved in almost every one of those situations. Tradition 1 helps me look at AA's view of things. Not just my own personal opinions, but how AA as a whole looks at a situation, at a problem you may be having with a meeting. And being a GSR, I'm involved in some situations right now where not just myself, but every member of the group needs to take a look at that. So I don't have any great words or any great kind of way of explaining this, but just simply reading it and relating it to the steps. Because this, like I said, is just like in my personal recovery, I go back to Step 1 in a lot of cases where I don't know how to handle something, or I'm having a problem with something. I have to see my powerless over that problem, whether it be alcohol or a mental problem or whatever. And when I'm having a problem with a meeting or somebody at a meeting, I have to go back to Tradition 1 and I have to find out whose welfare is coming first. And if it's mine, I need to step back and I need to look at the common welfare of the group and how I'm affecting that group as an individual. So I guess I kept it under 5 minutes, and that's about as simple as I can keep it. I don't want to complicate the traditions, because believe me, as you go down, it looks like it gets more complicated itself. So you don't need to throw anything in there personally to complicate it anymore. And so with that, I'm going to pass it on to Mary, who is going to talk about tradition number 2. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Reed, and I'm an addict alcoholic. Tradition 2 was one of the few that was made longer instead of shorter. So instead of reading the so-called long form, I'm going to read the long form of the short form. And it says, for our group purpose there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. This tradition reminds me of step 2, which says we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. In a group conscience, our higher power speaks through the majority of people and keeps some sanity in the group. Since there isn't one certain person in charge, the group conscience speaks for the group and gives it some order and direction. I've had a chance to see group conscience at work several times, not only in my home group, but also in the groups that I have attended. During the meetings of group conscience, such matters as who will act as secretary or intergroup representative, general service representative, or any other position that the group may need filled are voted on. Also, decisions are made such as whether the group of people want to have a closed group or an open meeting, a discussion meeting, or a lead meeting, or what day or what time they want it held, or such matters as these. When I first came to AA, I felt the traditions were just for the people who were in charge. And after a while, all I wanted to do was learn how to stop drinking for myself. After a while, I learned that the people who considered themselves an AA member were the ones that are in charge. That meant that I was one of the many others. And if I planned to stay sober for any length of time, I needed AA around to help me. The traditions and HP are what keeps AA around. That means the traditions are for all of us. This is different from any other organization that I've known. The people who are voted into positions are trusted servants. They serve the group. They report back to the group what they have learned. As an example, the treasurer reports how much money was collected and what was spent for what, like the rent, or how much was donated to central office or the other area groups. The general service representative is another example. Imagine the group is having a problem. The group holds a group conscience meeting but can't figure out how to solve the problem. They suggest the GSR talk about it at the next GSR meeting. He or she does so. Then some of the GSRs give some examples of how they worked through a similar problem. Our GSO brings these suggestions back to the group conscience. The group then decides which suggestions they want to follow, if they choose to follow any of them at all. The GSR doesn't tell them what to do, nor can he or she make them do anything. They're not a leader, they're just a trusted servant. They're not in charge. Usually, if he or she tries to make the group do anything, they're usually voted out of the position. So, in my opinion, the servants are merely messenger boys. They are trusted to carry out the duties of a leader of the group without carrying any power of authority, no glory, no money. Yet it is a very rewarding experience. As a trusted servant, I get the opportunity to meet other people in AA that I normally would not have met. I get a chance to see how AA works, learn the true meaning of what humility is, learn that not only am I not unique, but that my home group is not unique either. Going to a GSR meeting is like going to your sponsor. There is a feeling of comfort you find that although your group has character defects, there are ways of working through them so that they're not so big. By having a group conscience meeting, we are able to keep in contact with our higher power and thus keep sanity in our group. That's all I have, so I'll turn it over to Larry.
Hello, everybody. I'm Larry, and I'm an alcoholic. When I was asked to do this tradition, I thought this is going to be a nice one to do. It's really a very simple tradition. It doesn't have any big words in it that you can misunderstand or any tricky pronunciation marks that can change everything around. But as I started to think about it, I started getting it so confused that I really didn't. This question where I understood it myself. So I think what I'll do, instead of trying to express some of my opinions up here today, I'll just talk about the way I feel. I think I'll be better off that way, and people can't argue with the way I feel. So it's I've looked at this tradition, and I tried to figure out some of the things that I could say about it. But what I came up doing is probably maybe in a negative sense, trying to look at how, if I was going to change it, if I had to be on a committee, how would I change it? And it says the only requirement for membership is desire to stop drinking, and what other qualifications could a person put on it? If we went with religion or something like that, I have to look back to how I felt when I came in. And I know when I read the 24-hour book, I seen a lot of things in there. I seen Presbyterian elect. I heard them talking about that in there, and I heard them talking about Catholicism, and I heard talking about Baptist free wills. But what I really was seeing in there was my own bigotry. So I can't really go along with restrict membership on the basis of somebody's religion, mainly due to my own experience that I can't really think of anybody or any kind of religion that hasn't helped me in this. And when it came to other things, some of the big things like whether they're rich or whether they're poor, one of the, I think guy was, I think he might be a millionaire, but he put me on the track of what the Lord's Prayer meant. So I don't know if I could be sober today if this kind of requirement was placed on our membership. And obviously we talk about sex, male and female. We can look around here today and we can see how many of us there are. And I had a tremendous amount of help from the opposite sex, and I've had a tremendous amount of help from people who didn't have any money at all. So when I look back, I find that trying to put some kind of restriction on membership it's kind of makes me feel like a hypocrite, And if I was on that committee, it was I think I'd have to resign. Because in order to put some kind of, when I came into the program, I learned early on, this is a fatal disease. I've seen several people die of it real quick after I came into the program. And one of those persons could be me. So if I was on this committee, like I said, I think I'd have to resign, because in order for me to try and put some kind of restrictions on this, I would have to forget where I came from. And I don't want to do that. I don't dare to do that. But there is one restriction, there is one requirement. It says a requirement to stop drinking. And what do we do about that? There's been some discussions about that, I know, but if we would take that requirement out, then I think, or I feel, that we would be holding ourselves out to the public as being all things for all people.
And that's what a religion does. So that's not going to work. There has to be some requirement. And a requirement to stop drinking is it keeps us aimed at our central theme of what we're all about. And it lets us work along spiritual lines, because it is a spiritual program. Not a self-help program, as some people like to call it, but it is a spiritual program, and we cover along spiritual lines. So if we take out that one requirement, just that one requirement, the third step, a desire to stop drinking, then what we've done is that we quit working along those spiritual programs and along spiritual lines, and we've opened the door up to becoming a religion. And that's just exactly what we don't want to be. Thank you. Mike and Smith.
This thing is too short. Hi, I'm Mike Nowitzki, and I'm an alcoholic. And I was asked to say a few words about the fourth tradition, and this one does have a big word in it. It says each group ought to be autonomous, and that means basically that each group ought to be able to take care of its own affairs. Each group has the right to run a meeting any way it pleases, read what they want, not read what they want. Meetings can run for any length of time. If you go to various areas of the country, and I have had a few opportunities to attend AA meetings outside of the Dayton area, you'll find that they all are fairly similar. The beginning may be a little different, and some local customs may be a little different, but in essence they're all fairly similar. Then it puts sort of a restriction on it, if you can say restriction. Bob said that the traditions weren't rules or regulations or bylaws, but it does say except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. No one is going to come down and tell a particular group, you know, you mustn't do this, you can't do this, etc., etc. It's up to each group through the group conscience to decide if their actions or planned actions would be affecting other groups or AA as a whole. As Mary talked about the group conscience. Much later on today, Russ is going to talk about group inventory. This is part of the fourth tradition. I guess I want to mention a few things, I guess along the lines, it's maybe repeating some of the stuff that's already been said. You know, when I got here, to AA that is, and first looked at the traditions, I said, okay, that's fine and wonderful. I also had a couple of other opinions about the traditions. They were boring. I would never have read the second half of the 12 and 12 if I hadn't gone to a regular meeting that discussed the traditions. I also had the opinion that the traditions were the responsibility of the group and not my responsibility. And at that point that may have been true because I was trying to get sober. But eventually I realized that I was a part of the group and the traditions were also my responsibility. It was mentioned that the traditions overlap, and if you find one being violated or broken or in question, you're going to find others in the same basket, so to speak. Now, this happens a lot with the fourth tradition, and it's probably one of the least discussed traditions. But the fourth tradition asks us, asks the group, and asks each member of the group, are we doing anything that will affect other groups or AA as a whole? It's our responsibility to take a look at this. It's also, you know, our responsibility, my responsibility, to bring this up if I think something like that is occurring. You know, you'll hear, I guess if I'm ever at a meeting and a tradition's brought up, you kind of see everybody go, oh, like that. We're going to talk about traditions. And I tend to do the same thing. But it is my responsibility to bring this up if I think a tradition is being violated or in question, either at the meeting or to the GSR or to the secretary or whoever happens to be in charge to get the matter straightened out. That's really, I guess, all I have to say on this tradition, and I guess I'm supposed to introduce the coffee break.
So if you grab your coffee and a hand. If we could have tradition 5, 6, and 7 come up here in front and introduce the next one after you get done talking, please. And 5's first, and it's Gene. Hi, Gene.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Gene Trimback, and I am an alcoholic. Fifth tradition. Each Alcoholics Anonymous group ought to be a spiritual entity, having one primary purpose, that of carrying its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. I started doing a whole bunch of what I thought was research on what I was going to do, and was going to listen to tape and do this and do that, and took a book with me yesterday to work and put it in my truck. And when I got off work last night, it was still laying in my truck. So last night, the tradition kind of pretty much speaks for itself, really. It's the backbone of the AA program, really, is for us to carry the message to the alcoholic who still suffers. A lot of times I've gone to meetings and I've seen somebody new come in the doors, and the meeting will get off to a topic or a subject that really kind of gets away from alcoholism a little bit, and I sit there and wonder sometimes, is this person getting what he needs to get from this meeting, and what are we here for? We're here to keep, to help the other person stay sober, and that in turn helps us stay sober. It's kind of without helping or doing something for the alcoholic, we can't stay sober ourselves. I had a tape, or I still got a tape, about the 3 legacies of AA. Bill W. talks on how he got sober and what happened to him, and his sponsor Ebby, who was, there was no AA program then, came to his house, and Bill asked him if he wanted to drink, and he says no. He says, I'm not drinking. And he said, are you on the water wagon? He said, oh, no, I'm not drinking today. And anyhow, he went on. Bill asked him what was this, magic formula or whatever that was keeping him from drinking, and he explained to him that what he had to do, he found a group or whatever, and that was the things that they ask you to do. One of them was to get honest with yourself, talk things out with another, and kind of trust in God. And anyhow, Bill finally decided to go to the hospital, and he knew what he was going to do, that he would try it himself. And when he did start to go to the hospital, why he couldn't imagine why that what Ebby had told him put such an impact on him. And thank God he figured out it was one alcoholic talking to another that got him there, and in turn it started the program, or got the program started, because he started working with other people after he got out in order to save his own self. And that's the way the groups work too. We have to help each person that comes in the group. Without us helping the new members and getting the new people started in the program and getting them on the right track, we don't have any group. It'll diminish itself. I was reading an article a couple weeks ago in one of these pamphlets. I don't know which one it was, about a group. I don't even know where the group was, but they had started doing helping a lot of people that come into the program that had problems with getting jobs and stuff like that, and they decided they were going to set up some kind of a committee to, help these people find jobs and stuff. And what happened is they lost their primary purpose, of the group, and when new members come into the group, they got the wrong idea what was going on. Instead of coming in there to be helped and learn how to stay sober, they were in a place that was going to save them and get them a job and do everything for them, instead of them learning how to do the things they needed to do themselves, which is what we have to do, is teach them how to take care of themselves, and we also help them along with it. Plus, each of us have to work on other people or with other people for our own survival. I know that nothing makes me feel any better after a meeting than a new person comes in, for me to be able to go up and talk to that person and kind of welcome them and let them know that I care, and I've been there where they're at, and I'm there to help them anytime they need any help. Give them my phone number, whatever I have to do. And I've seen it a lot of times, like a new person would come into a group, and a lot of groups are, people, will have to agree with me. A lot of groups, we have our kind of talk sessions afterwards where everybody bunches together in 2 or 3 bunches, and we need to all kind of concentrate and remember that we got to help that new person that come into the group, or we're going to lose the new membership, and that's what keeps the AA together. And on the back of the grapevine it says, I am responsible when anyone anywhere reaches out for the hand of AA, and that goes for the group and the individual. We're responsible for these persons. And I also jotted down something I read in, I don't know what I even read it in, the Bill had quoted, it's better to do many things, or to do one thing well than many things badly. And so we better stick at helping the newcomer that comes in, and not worry about getting them jobs or helping them with their financial responsibility, or their marital problems, or whatever else may have you. And that's about all I got to say. I thank you very much.
I'm Hugh, and I'm an alcoholic. And this morning they gave me Tradition 6, and I don't know how I got stuck with that long one on it. But what I'd like to say here this morning is that AA should never be organized, and I see a very organized group here this morning until they introduced me on it, and so I'll break that all to hell on it. But I'm going to stick with this short form because I've got too much with this on it. And this morning, as we hear, and the word and why we're here this morning is unity. That's what we're here for. That's what, to maintain unity. And on our triangle, the one side is unity. And and the second thing we're here for this morning is that if we maintain unity in a group, that we can guarantee that the babies that are born in this area this morning and eventually are going to grow up to be alcoholics, some of them, will have the same opportunity and the same breaks as you and I did to stay sober. And that's what is important. An AA group will never endorse finance or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money and property and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. And as we went down to this, the primary purpose is the other traditions was to stay sober. And that's our primary purpose. And an AA group ought never endorse or finance or lend the AA name. And we have a lot of problems with that to maintain that today. And through our treatment centers and a lot of our media, we have problems with this, and to the simple thing of financing was way back. If you go through some of the things that they say that any group ought to never have more than $100 in their treasury. And I know that there's a lot of groups that do, but if you have any more than that, you send it to General Service or New York or wherever it is, and so to help other alcoholics. And why do we do this? Because if we create a lot of finances in a special group, then we are tempted with this to do things with it other than what it was called for, to finance things. An AA name ought, or lend the AA name, and this is where today we see in a lot of our treatment centers and stuff that they would like it for AA to endorse their programs, and we can't do that. We do it only on a voluntary basis. And this morning, as we talk about a group, now we're here as a group. Now we can't control the individual. The only thing we can control is the group, and it says that a group ought never do this. And a lot of times that we'll see an individual person give their name or speak out on AA, and that's brought back to the group or which group he comes from or where, and say, well, you can't do that. Well, no, he can't do that. That's according to our traditions. He's not supposed to do that. But if we get involved in that, then we're breaking traditions too on it. And what this does really is, if we do these things, is diverts us from our primary purpose. And if we lend the AA name, we lose control of our group. If we give our name, let someone else use our name, or we finance anything, then we are not in control of it anymore. AA. Then this other person who we give the name to or facility, they have a certain amount of control over us to tell us what we should do and what we should not do. And that's the reason we should never give the AA name. We see that a lot of people go publicly and as individuals, and we as AA groups don't like this, but that we can't do anything about it, that they do this. And in property, like it talks about in this book about clubs and stuff like that.